If you're trying to qualify for a mortgage and you have overtime income and you're having challenges qualifying, the loan officer either doesn't know how to deal with it, or they're telling you no, there's a reason for that. Uh, Calculating income or qualifying for a mortgage requires income, and overtime income is looked at and treated differently than your normal salary or hourly income. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Is we're going to talk about qualifying for a mortgage. If you have overtime income and what the underwriting guidelines are for that. So FHA. Now, I'm doing this series. There are 5 agencies. There's Fannie Mae conventional loans. There are Freddie Mac conventional loans. There are FHA government-insured loans. Then there are VA loans for veterans and people that served in the armed forces. And then there are USDA loans, which are for people that are buying in more rural type areas, not as densely populated areas. Now, FHA, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac are most people's options. Okay, so if you're a veteran, you need to be a veteran or served in the armed forces, but you need to meet certain qualifying criteria in order to qualify for a VA loan. So if you're a veteran and you want to use a VA loan, you want to use your VA loan. You wouldn't necessarily be looking at other options unless you were having challenges with the VA loan. If you're not buying in a USDA eligible area, then USDA doesn't really apply. But Fannie Mae conventional, Freddie Mac conventional, and FHA usually applies to everybody. So if you are having challenges, if you're just getting started, I would watch all 3 because there are certain criteria in all 3 that, or there are certain criteria in each one that might help you narrow your search so that you run less of a risk of an inexperienced loan officer trying to qualify you under guidelines that you don't qualify for. And that's quite frankly the entire point of why I'm doing this is I want you to hear what it's like to talk to somebody who's been doing this for over 20 years, because I sound a lot different than a telemarketer that's sitting in a call center somewhere that really just doesn't have any experience with loans. They're a desk jockey and they're just reading off of the computer. So, okay, so let's dive into this. There are 2 things that underwriters are looking for when it comes to overtime, and this applies for all agencies. Conventional, government, it doesn't matter. They're looking at the history of receiving overtime. How long have you been receiving your overtime? And is your overtime income consistent, increasing, or decreasing? So those are the 2 things they're looking at. How long have you received it? And is it the same? Has it gone up or has it gone down? Okay. So the history of receiving the income. Let's blow this up a little bit so you can see it. So they're going to look for a 2-year history. That's typical. Most agencies are looking for a 2-year history, and that means that you can produce tax returns, verification of employment, or your employer you have to show that you've made overtime income for the past 2 years. And less than 2 years will be considered if the income is consistently earned over a 1-year period and is likely to continue. Now, let me contrast this with other underwriting guidelines. Fannie Mae's underwriting guidelines are somewhat similar to FHA. They ask for a 2-year history, but they will accept less than a 2-year history if there are positive or compensating factors. Now, at Freddie Mac conventional wants a 2-year history. They don't have a lot of flexibility if you don't have full 2 years. Now we go to FHA government, and FHA government will consider it, but it has to be more than 1 year. And your employer is going to have to say, you're likely to receive this amount of overtime into the future. It's likely to continue. They don't have to guarantee it. They have to say it's likely to continue. So that's a little bit differently. So if you have been receiving overtime income for less than 2 years, you want to look at Fannie Mae conventional guidelines or FHA government insured guidelines. Freddie Mac's not going to be an option. Then the underwriter is going to look and they're going to see if it's increasing or decreasing. So if the income, if the overtime income decreases by more than 20% from the previous year, what the underwriter is going to do is they're going to use the lower average. So they're going to determine that the history, that you have the history determines whether or not you can use the overtime income. So yes, you have the history, but let's say that your overtime has decreased by more than 20%. So all overtime income is averaged. Almost all it's all averaged. It's usually averaged over the 24 months that you've received it. But if you have increases or decreases, it's going to be treated a little bit differently. If you have decreases, they're not going to average. They're not going to average the previous year that you made more. They're just going to take the average of the lowest amount. Now, they're going to want to see that it's stable though. So if it's more than 20% lower than it was in previous years, but it's not going up or down right now, it's just kind of staying steady, they will use that lower steady income. If it's approximately the same as it's always been, they're going to average it over a minimum of 24 months. If it's the same, okay? Oh, we didn't do that. So if it's increasing, they will use they will probably average it. Or if it has increased, but it's stable, then they're most likely going to use the higher amount. So FHA is probably the most flexible. So if you're having problems getting qualified with a conventional Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac loan, because the income, the overtime calculation, your debt to income ratio is too low. First of all, FHA is more flexible with the calculation of your overtime income. And second of all, the debt to income ratio limits are higher with FHA. So that's another reason why FHA might be a better option if you're having challenges qualifying for conventional because you can't use your overtime income. Now, the moral of the story here is that this is kind of complex, right? There's 5 different loans to choose from. Each one has different underwriting guidelines. Then you have underwriter discretion, and the underwriter can choose to use this calculation or that calculation. And then how does the underwriter make those decisions? Well, a lot of times the underwriter makes those decisions based on what the company says that how they should make those decisions, the company that they work for. It doesn't necessarily mean that it follows the underwriting guidelines. Sometimes it's just an overlay. It's just a strict rule that the lender wanted to give them. But most importantly, if you go online and you type in qualify for a mortgage, chances are you're going to get caught in a call center somewhere, because those companies spend billions of dollars a year to try to convince you that the way that you get your questions answered about qualifying for a mortgage is that you fill out a lead form online. That lead form gets sucked into a black box, lands on some kid's desk in a call center in Detroit, and they have no idea what underwriting guidelines are. They're just following prompts on a computer. That's the reason why I started findmywayhome.com. So I want you to understand that there are nuances, experience matters, and that you should always talk to a professional, not just the first person that calls you or blows up your text messages because you filled out a form online. So findmywayhome.com is a website that I started in 2008 or 2007, 2008, when the real estate market crashed. And I created this website to educate and empower consumers, because I get it. It's hard to trust anybody who says they're a mortgage professional, because you don't always know if they're actually a professional. And quite frankly, over the last decade, the internet has been owned by call centers and telemarketers, and they're not mortgage professionals. So there's two ways that you can connect with a mortgage professional through my website. You can go to findmywayhome.com. There's a link below in the description. You can ask your question there in detail, and I will match you with a mortgage expert that I know, like, and trust, and they will follow up with you, and I'll introduce you to one person and one person only. The other option is you can go to Find My Way Home, scroll to the bottom, and you can look, you can search by state. Whatever state you're in, you can see which loan officers are in our network. Everybody that you find on Find My Way Home is an experienced mortgage professional that I know, like, and trust. You're in good hands. When you reach out to somebody, you're talking to one person. So I hope this is helpful. Again, if you have overtime income, make sure you watch the FHA video, the Freddie Mac, and the Fannie Mae video. Those three calculations, those three underwriting guidelines are going to apply for almost everybody. Because you have to have special qualifying for VA or for USDA. So I hope this is helpful. If you have any questions at all, feel free to ask it in the comments below, or you can click on any of those links, and you can reach directly out to a mortgage expert that I know, like, and trust. And I hope this was helpful, and I hope that I was able to educate and inform you to make, or educate and empower you to make more informed decisions about qualifying for a mortgage. So thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.